ॐ
ॐ
सदाशिवसमारम्भाम्
सदाशिवसमारम्भाम्
शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम्
शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम्
अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम्
अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे
वन्दे
गुरुपरम्पराम्
गुरुपरम्पराम्
ॐ
सहनाववतु
सहनावतु सहनौ
सहनौ
भुनक्तु
वीर्यं
वीर्यं
करवावहै
करवावहै
तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु
तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु
मा
विद्विषावहै
शान्ति
ॐ
शान्ति
शान्ति
शान्तिः
शान्तिः
हरि ओम्
हरिः ओम्
ॐ
Okay, so in the last class we had started on the Ghatabhashyam, and let me briefly mention that part of it again, summarize that part of it again. So in the next mantra, the first mantra of section 2, second Brahmana, there is an opening mantra, opening part called Naiveha Kinchanagra Asit. Nothing existed before creation. So the entire Ghatabhashyam is to address that. So when you say nothing existed before creation, does it not imply Shunyavada or Asatvada? And Ghatabhashyam is addressing this doubt. And we saw that Shankara said there are two types of uh, two groups, two philosophical groups, two darshanas. One is called the Karana Asatvadi. Karana Asat means they deny the existence of the Karana, any cause before creation. So there is no Karanam for creation. And these are basically the Yogacara Buddhists, Shanika Vijnanavadi Buddhists. The second group is Karya Asatvadi. Karya is the product. So they accept a cause, the Karanam, but deny that the Karyam existed, the pre-existence of the Karyam. They say Karyam did not exist earlier, right? So to put it in other words, the question is whether the clay existed before the pot, right? And if you say yes, then the next question is whether the pot existed in the clay prior to the production of the pot, prior to the birth of the pot. Now, the Yogacharya Buddhists, they talk about only Shanika cognitions, that is Shanika Vijnanam, momentary mental cognition. And for them, there is no pot or no clay or no external world also, no external objects, because only these momentary mental cognitions exist. The Shanika Vijnanam, the momentary cognitions, momentary awareness or momentary consciousness, only they exist. So every thought, the observer, the observed, and even the Atma, for example, exists only for a single moment, Shanikam. And we saw that because everything is Shanikam, the, the concept of continuity does not exist. Well, continuity requires something to exist in the past and in the present. But when you say that everything is momentary only, then there is no concept of any continuity and there is no concept of any cause-effect relationship. Karana Karya Sambandha cannot be there because if there is a Karyam in the present moment, the Karanam did not exist. Right? This is their viewpoint. And Shankara refuted this by pointing to the concept of recognition, pratibhignya. Pratibhignya is something which this was there yesterday and I can recognize it today. So recognize. The cognize is the first one. The first time you see something is cognize. The second time you see it is recognize. So that which links the past and the present, that is called recognition, pratyabhignya, right? And anything that you can talk of, if you say this, what, let us say potato in the fridge, which I bought yesterday. So there is a yesterday potato and today potato. You are linking the past and the present. So this Yogacharya, he says, I don't accept your explanation. He says there is no continuity at all because according to me, everything is shanikam. And then if you say, why does this potato of today look like the potato of yesterday? That is the continuity. That is the recognition. So he says, no, no, no. You are making a mistake because there is merely a similarity and there is no continuity. And what does Shankara say? Shankara said, the moment you say similarity, what have you presupposed? Somebody is there who has observed the similarity. So if you tell me that today's potato is similar to yesterday's potato, it is not the same potato. The Shadika Vijnanavadi says it is not the same potato at all. It is only a similar potato. And Shankara says, who is making the observation about similarity? Which means the observer existed yesterday to see the potato of yesterday, and he is existing today to see this potato, and then he is saying that there is a similarity, right? So he tells the Buddhist that your very objection presumes that there is continuity of the observer. And with this, the, the idea which we are accepting now is that the clay existed before the pot. And therefore, we reject the idea of Shanika Vijnanam. Right? So we say the clay as the Karanam existed in the pot, existed in the past before the pot, which is existing today. That is the Karanam predates the pot. Karanam existed yesterday. The pot is existing today. This much we saw in the last class.
Acharya
Right?
ji, is it not the same as that nasato vidyate bhavaha, which we already know?
We will come to that. Okay, this is the Gata Bhashyam, so we will
Okay.
come to that also. This is the first, what I call, phase of the discussion, where we reject the Vijnanavadi, the Yogacharya Buddhist, and we say that no, 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 the Karanam always exists before the Karyam. So let us, for the sake of the discussion, especially because it is Ghata Bhashyam, we have to take the Ghata into consideration, the pot, right? It is the pot Bhashyam. So what have we said? Yes, the clay existed before the pot was born. Okay. So to restate that, the pot was born from the clay. So both statements are okay. The clay existed before the birth of the pot. The pot was born from the clay. Both statements we accept. Now a further question comes. If the clay existed before the birth of the pot, and you are saying the pot was born from the clay, there is a fresh question. Did the pot exist in the clay before the pot was born? So each word you have to carefully understand. Did the pot exist in the clay before the pot was born? Okay. So the Asatkaryavada, the Nayayikas, they say that they don't accept the idea that the pot existed in the clay before it was born. Why? The argument is that if the pot already exists, where is the question of it being born? Right? And therefore, they say the idea is very simple. You are saying the pot exists in the clay. Then don't say the pot is born. It already exists. Something which already exists need not be born at all. And therefore, they say your argument is wrong. The pot was not existing in the clay before it is born. This is the Nayayika, right? What was the earlier refutation? We refuted the Shanika Vijnanavadi. Now this is Shankara taking up the Nayayika, Tarkashastra fellow. Nyaya. So he says, Shankara says, no. The pot was already existing in the clay, but in potential form, right? So how do you say this? So he gives 5 reasons to the Nayayika, to tell the Nayayika that you are wrong. So first reason, the Sanskrit Bhashyam uses the word Abhivakti Lingatvat. Abhivakti means manifestation. So he says the first reason why I'm saying the pot existed in the clay before its birth is that because something comes and becomes manifest. Abhivakti is the manifestation, right? Because something becomes manifest, whenever something becomes manifest, you must remember it already exists. So let's take the example of a dark room. Right? You go into a dark room, you cannot see anything. Now you switch on the light or the torch. Then you find that there is a table over there. Right? Previously, when you entered the room, you did not see the table. When you put on the light, you saw the table. Was the table born or did it become manifest?
The table became manifest.
Table became manifest. And therefore, would you say a table was already there in the room before the light came on?
Yes.
Yes. So this is the argument Shankara says. When something comes into manifestation, you cannot say it was not there. It was already there. Okay. So he says the same way, when the pot is manifested, it means the pot was already there in the clay. Okay. Now Nayayika gives another argument. See, these are all, very, very good ways of sharpening our brain. That's why the bhashyams are very important. And you'll find lots of bhashyams which talk about these things. So Nayaka says that I don't accept what you say about manifestation. Supposing you don't talk about tables. He says, come back to the clay and the pot, the Brhd and the Ghata. Supposing there is a lump of clay in the dark room, and you are saying the pot is already present in the clay. So Nayaka's argument is ingenious. You are saying the pot is there in the clay and the clay is in the dark room. But when I enter the dark room and switch on the light, only the clay comes to manifestation. I don't see the pot at all. Shankara says, okay, you see only the clay. But look at the example of the table. He says when the table came into manifestation, the obstacle, the avaranam to the manifestation of the table was removed. What was the obstacle to the manifestation of the table?
Light.
The light. That was removed. So in the case of the table, the avaranam was the darkness. Darkness was removed, and therefore, by whom? By the light. That is you have to remove the obstacle to the manifestation. You cannot simply say that I put on the light. The obstacle to the manifestation of the table was darkness, and light removes the darkness. So by putting on the light, the table was manifest. But in the case of the pot in the clay, the obstacle is not the light. The obstacle is not the darkness. There is another obstacle. That obstacle has to be removed. When that obstacle is removed, then only can the pot become manifest. What is the obstacle? Obstacle is that clay can assume only one particular form at one time. That means that when the clay is in lump form, you cannot see the pot. It cannot be in the pot form. It can assume only one form at one time. So when the clay is in lump form, obviously it cannot be in the pot form. And that is why you don't see the pot. What do you have to do? You have to destroy all the forms other than the pot. And when you do that, so the all pots, all forms other than the pot are the obstacle. When you remove that, which includes the clay form, the obstacle includes the clay form. And when you do that, all the forms are removed. And when the forms other than the pot are removed, the pot manifests. The pot is seen. And that is what is called manifestation. Therefore, the pot already exists in the potential form, in the clay. When you mold that clay into a pot form, what are you doing? You are removing the possibility of other forms. And that is called manifestation. I hope you're following the argument. You have to very closely follow the arguments in these cases because it's all involved. And okay, right. So that is the first argument Shankara gives, that you have to remove the obstacle, the correct obstacle. And when you understand what the obstacle, and then when you remove it, it will come into manifestation. Okay. Then the second thing is, he calls it vipratishedaha, virodaha, the objection. So he says, Shankara says, when the pot maker is about to make the pot, he has not yet made the pot, the process has not started. And when he's about to make the pot, and you go there and ask him, where is the pot? Okay, this is all hair splitting. The pot maker is sitting at his tool with the clay. He is about to make the pot. You go and say, where is the pot? What will be the answer?
In his mind.
Okay,
It's in the clay. He will say that.
He will say
let's
that
say,
you will get it in some
very,
time.
very good. He will say that you will get it. That the pot will come. Right. So in Sanskrit, the word is ghataha bhavishyati. The pot will be coming. You say, see where we are going. When the potter says the pot will be coming, then you have to ask the question. The pot which is going to be coming, is it an existing pot or a non-existing pot? See, your head is already becoming warm, right? But this is the way the argument proceeds. The pot which the potter says will come in 15 minutes or 20 minutes. That pot, that coming pot, is it the existing pot or a non-existing pot? Now, if you say it is a non-existing pot, then there is a grammatical problem. The pot is coming. There is a word coming, which is a verb. Every verb requires a noun. And what is the problem? The pot is
How it
coming.
can come with when it is not there?
Yes, there is a
Yes.
non-existent pot. You cannot use the word a verb to qualify a non-existing noun. So when the subject itself is not existent, because the pot is not existent, how can you use the verb? Bhavishyati will come. So that is one problem. Supposing you say, no, no, I am not saying that. I am saying from the point of the future, the pot is existing, right? So Shankara will say, let's not talk about the future today. Okay. In fact, the argument is let us say the pot comes after half an hour. So let us mentally move half an hour forward. So when you are saying something is going to come in the future, you are actually referring to the future which has become the present. So involved argument, right? When you say the pot is coming, you're talking about the future, but you're talking about the future as if it has become the present. Therefore, the pot has already come. Okay. What is the point of this involved argument? Shankara is saying that you cannot use the word bhavishyati, will come, because from the point of the future, the pot has come. Therefore, you should be saying ghataha asti and not ghataha bhavishyati. Pot is, you should say, and not say pot will come. So if I have to talk about the future today, if I have to talk about the future today, the would be existent pot of the future is not a would be existent pot of the future. Today, if I'm talking about that pot, it is not an existent pot. It is a potentially existent pot. When I say this pot will come after half an hour, the word this pot is not really correct. You should say this potentially existing pot will come after half an hour, which means this potentially existing pot just now, after 30 minutes, it will become an existing pot. Clear?
Yes, so that means it will take the shape and form and
The potential will get converted into actuality, right? So, what we are saying, Adabhatin, is that whenever you say a potential pot is the subject of a verb, it is an existing potential pot and not a non existing pot. It is always potentially existing pot. Sorry. Okay, that much we are struggling with, right? Now there's a further struggle. Question is, if the pot is already existing in the clay before its creation, how can people say there is no pot when they see the clay? The general public, when they look at the clay, they won't say that's pot. They will say that is clay. And therefore, the question is that if you're talking about the potential pot already existing in the clay, how do you answer this? Why do people say there is no pot? Now, Shankara takes a discussion on this. He says that when you say existence, existence is of two types. What is that? A functional existence, the actual existence. Right? Now, he says, take the case of the pot. The pot is existent in the past, in the present, and in the future. Always. There is no time when the pot does not exist. Right? But the existence in the past, that means in the clay before the pot was born, is in avyakta avastha, unmanifest form. And similarly, after the pot is destroyed, in the future, also it is avyakta avastha, unmanifest form. Only during the present, during the life of the pot, after it is born, does it have vyakta avastha, and only that vyakta avastha is a functional existence. Remember that pot exists in all three time frames, but it is manifest only in the present. And only when it is manifest, its existence is functional. In both the other time frames, it is existing actually, but not functionally. So in past, it's existing actually, but not functionally. In future, its existence is actual, but not functional. In the present, its existence is actual and functional. This is the second argument. I hope.
Can I?
सर
Yeah, yeah.
अव्यक्तादीनि भूतानि मध्यभक्तानि भारत.
Yeah, that is the same idea. Yes, Sudhir.
Yeah. So, does it mean that he is trying to, or he is differentiating between Vyavaharika and Paramarthika level?
There is no
Functional.
Paramarthika here at all. No, there is no Paramarthika here at all. All three are Vyavaharika, but one is
Okay.
potential, one is actual. And only
Okay.
the
Okay.
actual existence has functional existence. Like your bangle exists in the gold, but only when it becomes a bangle, that gold has functional existence as a bangle. Otherwise, it is pure gold. You can't hang it on your neck. That is the
Okay.
second argument.
So, what we call as human birth is a functional part of the existence.
The jiva is functional during the human birth. He can
So
do
it is in
karma.
the present. So what we call
Yes.
as my present or your present, it is our
Functional part of the jiva where you can
entity,
do karma. You
functional
can
part
do
of.
karma. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Then there is a
Very profound.
Shankara's Bhashyams are very profound. Then there is a third argument. Here, the Nayayika says that you, what about, yogis? Now, if you are familiar with Yoga Shastra, and of course in the Puranas and all that, there are yogis and jnanis talked about who have knowledge of the past, present, and the future. Okay. So we are talking about examples appearing in Shastram and Yoga Shastra, where they say yogis have Trikala. They have Trikala Jnani, right? They know all the three frames of time. And therefore, he says, now Shankara uses that and says, if you are talking about the yogi who is going to be talking about something happening in the future, that, let us say, he says that so and so person will be born in the future as an avatar, right? There are examples in the Puranas about people talking about the birth of Rama as an avatar, right? Now, the person who talks today about about the Lord coming as an avatar in the future, Shankara says that future he can talk about only if that future is already existing in the present, in the potential form. Very important statement. The jnani who is a Trikali jnani, can talk about the future only if that future is already existing in the present in a potential form. Because if that future is not existing today in a potential form, then the knowledge does not have an object at all. Every knowledge has to have an object. And if your future knowledge you're talking about, the future knowledge has to have an object. And if it's not, then that jnani is not sarvagya. He cannot talk about the future. Therefore, the future must become a prameyam in the present in its potential form. And from that he derives the future pot must exist today in the potential form. This is the third argument why the pot exists in the clay. Okay, right. Three arguments why pot exists in clay. Now, the fourth argument, he says, in the Sanskrit word is abhavatvat, because of being non-existent. Right. Now, we have seen this argument in Bhagavad Gita also. in the second chapter. There are 4 types of abhava, non-existence. What are they?
The prior non-existence, prag abhava.
Pragabhava,
Pradvamsa.
After the
posterior
dhvamsa,
non-existence.
posterior non-existence. Atyanta
Yes, absolute non-existence.
and apekshika.
Anyonya abhava. So there are 4. Pragabhava, prior non-existence. Pradvamsa abhava, posterior non-existence. So prior non-existence means non-existence before the birth of the object being referred to. Posterior abhava, pradvamsa abhava, pradvamsa literally means destruction. So the non-existence after the destruction. Atyanta abhava, absolute non-existence, which can never exist. Trikale nasti. Like the example is the horn of the rabbit, right? No rabbit in the past had a horn. No rabbit today will have a horn. No rabbit in the future will have a horn. So atyanta bhava never existed. Trikale api nasti. Then the fourth one is anyonya abhava. Anyonya means in relation to another, so mutual. So anyonya abhava, mutual non-existence. For example, the pot is not a table. The pot does not have tableness. And the table does not have potness. The pot doesn't have the nature of a table, and the table doesn't have the nature of a pot. So difference is because of the nature itself. Anyonya abhava. Right. So these are all classifications made in Tarka Shastra by the Nyaya philosopher. They are the ones who have divided the non-existence into 4 types. These 4 types. And Shankara says the 4th category, Anyonya abhava, he says this is called difference because difference is existing, right? When you talk about something, that must exist. So anyonya abhava, the difference must exist. And still, what is the name of the difference? Abhava, non-existence. Therefore, Shankara says, difference when you say anyonya, it is a something which can be experienced. Therefore, it's an existing concept. And therefore, he says that your argument about Anyana Bhava, remember, he says Anyana Bhava is actually existing and not non existing. Because I can perceive the difference between a table and a pot. Therefore, the difference I can understand. And what I can understand must exist. Therefore, Anyanya Bhava is not non existing, it is actually existing. Right? From here, Shankara says that he extrapolates. He says if the Anyonya Abhava is existing and it is one of the 4 Abhavas, and since I have proved that Anyonya Abhava is existing, obviously he says you can extend that argument to the 3 Abhavas. And Pragabhava is existing, Pradhamsa Abhava is existing, and Atyanta Abhava is also existing. All 4 Abhavas must be existing. So Pragabhava, when you say something which is a non-existence before the birth of something, pot, let us say, pragabhava of the pot. It's a abhava only, and therefore it must exist. Similarly, all the other abhavas. What does Shankara conclude? There is no concept of non-existence in Advaita. Advaita does not accept a concept called abhava. There is no such thing as non-existence. Everything exists as what?
Potential form. Brahman
as
or
Brahman,
as Brahman.
as the witness. So the Jagat Abhava, the non-existence of the world, has to be understood as Adhishthanam, the substratum of the non-existence of the world, which is nothing but Brahman. And since Brahman exists, we accept everything is Brahman. The non-existence of the world is also Brahman. Therefore, we don't accept the very concept of non-existence. Therefore, what is the conclusion from all this? Srishte Purvam Gataha Asti. Before the creation of the pot, it existed. Right? Then there is a fifth argument. Asat Sambandha Abhavat. Because of no connection with non-existence. Okay, this is based on the definition of Utpatti, birth, according to the Nyaya philosophers. How do they define birth? So he says, before the Utpatti, before the birth of the pot was non-existent. Why? Because he is a Asat Karyavadi. He says, before birth, the product is not there. Pot was not there. So before the pot is born, there exists the Karanam alone, the clay. The Karyam, the pot is not there. It's a very involved argument. Okay, so what is the argument? Before the birth of the pot is not there. Only clay exists. Then, when the pot maker begins to sit at his, on the tools, starts to spin the clay, starts to work on the clay to produce the pot comes into existence. That's the critical word, comes into existence. How does it come into existence? So Nayaka says it gets a association with the clay. The pot gets associated with the clay, and this is got a technical name, Samavaya Sambandha. Right? So his argument is that, Nayayika's argument is that when the non-existent pot originates because of its intimate association with the clay, at the time of the origination, the pot borrows existence from the clay. The non-existent pot is born by borrowing existence from the clay because of this connection. Samavaya Sambandha. Therefore, what is birth? The association of the non-existing pot with the existing clay to reveal or to become an existing pot is called birth. Right? And therefore, when from the Karanam something borrows existence, that something is the Karyam, it is born. This is the theory of creation, Srishti. So, what is the loophole in this argument? The non existent pot, he says, Nayaka says, originates, is born because of its sambandha with the existing clay. So, there is a relationship postulated by the Nayaka between two things, the existing clay and the non-existing pot. And because of that sambandha, the creation will happen. So
That's
Shankara
not
asks,
possible. That's not possible. How can a non-existent thing have some relation with?
exactly. So Shankara says, how can there be a sambandha between a non-existing thing and an existing thing? Sambandha is only possible between two existing things. In fact, between two non-existing things, there can be no sambandha. Between one existing and other non-existing things also, there can be no sambandha. If you say that, it's like saying, I want to get my son married, existing son married to a non-existing girl. There will be no marriage at all. So both should have existence to have sambandha. And here, Nayaka's theory is that one is non-existing, that is the pot, and the other is existing, that is the clay. Therefore, this idea is not correct. There cannot be any sambandha between the asat and the sat. And because of the five reasons, he says that your idea that the pot did not exist before creation is wrong. The pot did exist, but in potential form. And therefore, of course, the whole thing is because of the lines which you have not yet come to. The first mantra of the second Brahmanam, which starts as Naiveha Kinchan Agra Asit. There was nothing before creation. And so here Shankara ends up by saying that this should not be taken to mean that the Jagat was non-existent. Okay. Now, since Shankara was talking to the Tarka Shastra fellow, Nyaya is Tarka Shastra. That is why he used logic to refute. It's a very fine point, okay? When you discuss with a person who is using logic, you cannot use Shastra to refute because he doesn't accept Shastra. He accepts only logic. And therefore, Shankara used logic to refute the Tarka Shastravadi. But supposing somebody comes and says, that is all fine, but Shruti does not say that universe exists. And I am a believer in Shruti. Shruti is Pramanam for me. And Shruti says very clearly, Naiveya Kinchanagra Asit. Nothing existed before the creation. So how do you reconcile? Okay, so Shankara points out the very next statement is Mrityune Vedam Avritam Asit. Mrityuna Idam Avritam Asit. Which means the Mrityu here is the Karanam, Idam is the Karyam. We'll discuss this in detail when we come to that particular mantra. He says, the very next sentence is that the Karyam was veiled, hidden by the Karanam. And if the Karyam is non-existent, and if the Karanam also is non-existent, then the sentence will mean that the non-existent Karyam was hidden by the non-existent Karanam. It is not possible. Right? It's like saying there is a rabbit's horn on the table, but it is hidden by the sky flower. So these are typical Shastric usage. Both are examples of Atyanta Bhava. Rabbit's horn, Trikale Nasti, not existing in all the three frames of time. The sky flower, non-existing in all the three frames of time. So when he says it's like saying the rabbit's horn on the table is hidden by the sky flower, it is like saying that one non-existing thing is covered by another non-existing thing. Right? So that is not logical at all. When you talk of covering, both should be existent things. And therefore the final conclusion is that before Srishti, both the Karanam and the Karyam, both were existent. Karanam in actual form, Karyam in potential form. With this, Ghanabhashyam is over. I mean, I have not taken the full thing, only the very important part has been summarized. Anything? Any questions? Okay, I suggest that you go over this very carefully, okay, because all very subtle ideas and very important for us to assimilate fully. Okay, now so we'll come to the next section. Creation is discussed in 5 mantras, right? Now, the mantras are in very obscure language and very complicated. and a very peculiar view of creation is presented, right? Whether you believe in this or not really doesn't matter because it is to explain, not to explain Srishti, but present the concept of Vedanta. So we will just read out the first five mantras and then I'll explain. As I said in this particular Upanishad, we are not going to go word by word. We will, as far as possible, give only the overall meaning. And if any word by word is required, that will handle at a later stage. So this is the second Brahmanam, the first mantra. We will chant. Please unmute yourself. नैवेह किञ्चनाग्रह आसीत्
नैवेह किञ्चनाग्रह आसीत्
आग्रह
आसीत्
आसीत्
मृत्युनैवेदमावृतमासीत्
मृत्युनैवेदमावृतम् आसीत्
मृत्युनैवेदमावृतमासीत्
अशनायया अशानाया हि मृत्युः
अशनायाय
तन्मया
हि मृत्युः
अशनाया हि मृत्युः
तन्मनो कुरुत
तन्मनो
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 कुरुत
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 आत्मन्वीस्यामिति
आत्मन्विष्यामिति
आत्मन्वेष्यामिति
मिति
सोर् सोर्चन्नचरत
सोऽर्चन्न चरत
सोऽर्चरत
तस्यार्चत
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 आपो जायन्त
आपो
आपो
जायन्त
जायन्त
अर्चते वै मे
अर्चते वै
अर्चते
मे
वै मे
सम्भूदिति तदेव
कम्बोदिति तदेव
नैवेदम्
तदेव
अर्कस्यार्कत्वं कं हवा
अर्कस्यार्कत्वं कं
अर्कस्यार्कत्वं
हवा
त्वं
अस्मै भवति
अस्मै
भवति
भवति
य एवम् एतद् अर्कस्यार्कत्वं वेद
य
य एवम्
य
एतत्
एवम्
अर्कस्यार्कं कर्तव्यं वेद
अर्कस्यार्कत्वं वेद
So that is the first mantra. Now we will look at the second one. Apo va arkastadya ako va arkastadhyadapam shara
आपो वा
आपो वा
arkastadhyadapam shara
अर्कस्तद्यदपांशरः
यदपां शरः
आसीत् समहन्यत
आसीत्
आसीत्
समहन्यत
समहन्यत
सा सा पृथिव्या भवत्तस्याम् आश्रयत्तस्य
सा
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 पृथिवी
पृथिव्यं
पृथिव्या
भवत्तस्यामश्राम्यत्तस्य
भवत्तस्यामश्रयतस्य
शान्तस्य
प्रान्तस्य
शान्तस्य
तप्तस्तस्य
तप्तस्य
तप्तस्य
तेजो
तेजोरसो
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 निर्वतताग्निः
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 थर्ड मात्रा सत्रेदात्मानं
तत्रेदात्मानं
व्यकुरुतादित्यं
व्यकुरुतादित्यम्
व्यकृतादित्यम्
तृतीयं वायुं तृतीयं स एष
तृतीयं
तृतीयं
वायुं
वायुं
तृतीयं स
तृतीयं
एष
स एष
प्राणस्त्रेधा विहितः
प्राणस्त्रिधा विहितः
प्राणस्त्रेधा विहितः
तस्य प्राची
तस्य
तस्य
प्राची
प्राची
दिक्षरोऽसौ चासौ चेर्मौ
दिक्षिरौ
दिक्षिरासौ
असौ
दिक्षिरसौ
सौ चे
अथास्य प्रतीची
तथास्य
तथास्य
प्रतीचि
प्रतीची
प्रतीची
दिक्पुच्छमसौ चासौ
दिक्पुचम् असौ चासौ
दिक्पुच्छमसौ चासौ
ससख्यौ
सख्यौ
सख्यौ
दक्षिणाचोदीची
दक्षिणा च उदीची
दक्षिणाचोदीची
च पार्श्वे द्वौ
च
पार्श्वेद्यौ
पार्श्वेद्वौ
पार्श्वेध्वौ
पृष्ठमन्तरिक्षमुदरम् इयुमरः
पृष्ठमन्तरिक्षमुदरम्
पृष्ठमन्तरिक्षमुदरम्
इमुरः
इयमुरः
स एषोऽप्सु
स
एषोऽप्सु
प्रतिष्ठितो यत्र
प्रतिष्ठिति
प्रतिष्ठितो
यत्र
यत्र
क्व चैति
क्वचैति
चैति
तदेव प्रतिष्ठत्येवं विद्वान्
तदेव
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 प्रतिष्ठत्येव
प्रतिष्ठित्येव विद्वान्
विद्वान्
सोकामयत्
सोकामयत्
कामयत्
कामयत्
द्वितीयो म आत्मा जायेतेति
द्वितीयो
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 आत्मा
आत्मा
जायेति
जायेतेति
स मनसा वाचं मिथुनम्
स
स
मनसा
मनसा
वाचं
वाचं
मिथुनम्
मिथुनम्
सम्भवत् अशनाय तद्यद्रेत
समभवदर्शनाय
मृत्यु
मृत्युस्तद्येत्
तद्यत्रेत
आसीत् स संवत्सरो भवत्
आसीत् स
आसीत्
संवत्सरो भवत
संवत्सरो भवत्
भवत्
नः पुरा ततः
नः
नः पुरा
पुरा
न
ततः
ततः
पुराततः
संवत्सर आस
संवत्सर
संवत्सरासः
आस
तमेतावन्तम्
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 कालं विभः
कालं
कालं विवह
विभः
यावान् संवत्सर संवत्सरस्तमेतावत्
यावान्
यावान्
यावान् संवत्सरः तमेतावत्
कालस्य परस्तादसृजत्
कालस्य
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 परस्तादसृजत्
परस्तादसृजत्
तं जातम् ददात्स
तञ्जातमभिव्याददात्सः
भानकरोत्सैव
भान करोति
भानकरोत्सैव
वाग्भवत्
वाग्भवत
आभवत्
स एक्षत यदि वा
स ईक्षत यदि वा
एष यदि वा
इमम् अभिशंस्ये
इमम्
इमम्
संशये
अभिसंस्ये
कनियोन्नं करिष्य इति
कनियोऽहं
कनियोऽन्नं
करिष्य इति
करिष्य
इति
इति
स तया वाचा तेनातं नेदम्
तया
सतया
तया
वाचा
वाचा
इदं
तेनात्मनीदम्
सर्वम् असृजत्
सर्वम्
सर्वम्
सर्वमसृजत्
सृजत
असृजत्
यदिदं किञ्च
यदिदं
यदिदं
किञ्च
किञ्च
अचो यजुंषि सामानि
ऋचो
ऋचो
यजुंषि
यजुंषि
सामानि
सामानि
छन्दांसि यज्ञान् प्रजाः पशून्
छन्दांसि
छन्दांसि
यज्ञान्
यज्ञात्
प्रजाः
प्रजाः
पशून्
पशून्
स यद्यद् एवासृजत्
स
स यद्यद्
यद्यदेवासृजत्
एवासृजत्
तत्तत् तुम् ध्रियत सर्वं वा अतीति
तत्तदुग्रं
तत्तदुं ध्रियतः
यत
सर्वया
सर्व वा
अतीति
इति
तददितेरादित्यत्वम्
तद्दितेरदित्यम्
तदादित्येरदित्यम्
सर्वस्यैतत्स्याता भवति
सर्वस्याथा
सर्वस्याथा
भवति
भवति
सर्वस्यान्नं भवति
सर्वस्यान्नं भवति
सर्वस्यान्नम भवति
स एवम् एतद् अतिरेतद् इत्यत्वं वेद
य
य
एवं
एवम्
तेरदित्वं
तदित्यत्वं वेद
So these are five mantras. Give the gist. Among these mantras, the third mantra talks about Agni Upasana. And before we come to that, let us just have a brief overview of the five mantras. So normally creation begins with Ishvara. Ishvara creates Hiranyagarbha, and Hiranyagarbha, Lord Brahmaji, is the creator of the entire Srishti. Right? And here the word Mrityu is used to indicate Hiranyagarbha. And from that Hiranyagarbha, the following items have come. Manaha Samashti, the Manaha, Sthula apaha jalam. That is the jalam in the gross form, not subtle form. Then sthula prithvi, the gross earth. Then virat. The virat is to be taken as Agni. Then Aditya, the sun. Then Shabdaha, words or sound. In the three Vedas, Rik, Yajur, Samaha, Yajnaha, and Prajaha. Prajaha means the Manushyaha, and Pashavaha, the animals. So, as you can see, all the words in the mantras are peculiar words used to describe these objects. And if you want to know the reason behind the use of such words to describe objects, then you have to get into the Bhashyam in detail, where Shankara justifies the use of each word. So we'll not get into all that. We'll just accept it as it is. And if somebody wants to know what Shankara's reasoning is, then you will have to get into the Bhashyam itself. So all these 10 were born out of Mrityu, which is Hiranyagarbha. So this is the content of the 4 mantras. And in the third mantra, as I said, Agni Upasana is talking. So here Hiranyagarbha divides himself into 3 portions, which are called Agni, Vayu, and Aditya. This is Srishti. Okay, this is the Srishti. As I said, it's a peculiar way of describing the Srishti. So Agni has been born out of Hiranyagarbha. When I say Hiranyagarbha divides himself, that means Agni is born out of Hiranyagarbha. And Agni is given 2 titles here, Arkaha, which we are familiar with, and Apratishthitaha, right? So you have to note very carefully. It is Apratishtaha, Pratishtitaha, not Apratishthitaha. Apratishthitaha means not manifest, but here Pratishtitaha. So these are the 2 names of Agni. And we should know this because many of the upasanas are based on these titles. So how Hiranyagarbha created the world is briefly described here. He did not use any effort. Hiranyagarbha was merely contemplating on the creative power which he had. And when he was doing that, the Srishti came into existence. And the order is peculiar here. The first is Manaha and the second is Apaha. Right? Apaha is called Kam because Jalam, Apaha is Jalam, also called Udakam. And therefore the shortened form of Kam is used over here. So Kam means the Jalatattvam, the water, which was born when Hiranyagarbha was contemplating upon himself. And the glorification which he was doing is called Archati. So while doing Archana, the water came. And therefore, Arkaha is the second name which is given over here. Now, the Hiranyagarbha himself is called Arkaha. Therefore, the water associated, the water which is born from Hiranyagarbha is also called Arkaha. And the Agni which was born from Hiranyagarbha is also called Arkaha. Therefore, the Upanishad says that one who meditates upon Agni, which is Arkaha, will get lots of Arkaha. And the first Arkaha is Agni. Meditating upon Arkaha Agni will get Arkaha. Remember that in Sanskrit, the word Kam also means Ananda. Therefore, the one who performs this Arkaha Agni Upasana gets Ananda or peace of mind. This is the first title of Agni. The second title is called Ap Pratishtitaha. Pratishtitaha means based upon. So up is water. Therefore, that which is based upon water. And if you see the list which we gave, the second creation is Agni, and then Agni comes from the water which came from Hiranyagarbha. Therefore, Agni is called based upon water. Pratishtha. That Agni is based upon water. And one who does meditation upon this Agni will get pratishtha, security in life. This is all very briefly what is happening in the mantras. With this, we'll stop for today and we'll take this up again in the next class from this point onwards. We are still discussing the upasanas. Okay. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your patience.